Walmart is ending its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Walmart confirmed on Monday it would no longer consider race and gender to boost diversity when granting supplier contracts. The retail giant will also curb racial equity training for staff and review its support for Pride events. The changes were made public after an anti-DEI activist named Robbie Starbuck threatened to expose Walmart. Starbuck wrote on X, "Massive news, Walmart is ending their woke policies. I can now exclusively tell you what's changing and how it happened. Last week I told execs at Walmart that I was doing a story on wokeness there. Instead, we had productive conversations to find solutions." Starbuck added, "Below are the changes Walmart committed to. I have to give their executives major credit because this will send shockwaves throughout corporate America. This is the biggest win yet for our movement to end wokeness in corporate America." That's the other anti-woke Robbie out there.
Walmart joined an array of companies, including Ford, John Deere, Harley-Davidson, Boeing Company, to name a few, to pull their DEI programs. Walmart released a statement saying, "We've been on a journey, and no, we aren't perfect, but every decision comes from a place of wanting to foster a sense of belonging, to open doors to opportunities for all our associates, customers, and suppliers, and to be a Walmart for everyone."
This move by Walmart did attract some social media reactions. Christopher Rufo of City Journal, writing on X, "Walmart is backing down from DEI and shuttering its Center for Racial Equity. This is another huge win." Tiffany Fong wrote on X, "Walmart is cutting back its DEI programs and preventing sellers from listing some LGBTQ-themed items on its website. Can't wait for this woke, SHIT, to be over." And Elon Musk also chimed in, as he often does, "The tide has turned." Joining us now to discuss is GOP strategist Melik Abdul. Thank you for joining us, Melik.
Thanks for having me.
So I have long hypothesized that the kind of height of wokeness or cancel culture, or it's that, whatever metaphor you want to use for it, maybe an infection, in the corporate world, the height of it was like 2019 to 2022, and it is now retreating from those institutions as corporations discover that A, you can't appease ultimately, like your easily offended woke employees, nothing will ever be good enough for them. B, this doesn't make money because consumers hate it. And C, a lot of these initiatives actually have a very, for instance, the anti-bias kind of training is actually very unscientific and does not have a good track record of improving employee relations. And so they're shedding it, as it seems to be the case. What do you think?
So I think we should understand that when it comes to woke is more so now an umbrella. It's an umbrella term, and a lot of things fall under it. There are things that companies, organizations, and governments have done for years around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but some of those things have been maybe around recruitment efforts. So you may have a place like a Lockheed Martin who understand a certain community, whether that's an indigenous community or in places in urban centers where they specifically target those individuals, and the majority of them may be minority. Those are those efforts. But then from the conservative perspective, and this is where the problem has really lied, is that they see anything nowadays as anything that is DEI, that means that you are automatically unqualified. And that has added another layer to the discussion. Over the years, we have seen, and you mentioned it, we've seen over the years this anti-racism this effort to unlearn racism. I think that is one of the things for advocates of those in the DEI industry. This is one of the things where they've gone too far. So where you're advocating for things like, certain literature in schools and books, and parents were protesting, and then you had the Department of Justice, kind of trying to get involved, issuing statements about these type of threats. That changes the entire dynamic. So I think when it comes to DEI, we've seen even over the past 4 years, from 2020, where you had organizations install, hiring, Black executives, and this push for say their names. You're wearing Breonna Taylor's name on your back. All of these things happen, and within the span of 4 years. To your point, when it comes to those type of anti-racism efforts, we've seen that there is no empirical evidence to show that actually does anything for the actual company, and it seems as if we're here now.
So I just want to get back to the point that you began with, Melik, which is the elements of DEI or wokeness, which is not a term I love, but in any event, the things that you do think are legitimate within that approach. So I note that in Walmart's case, there's a suggestion, well, more than a suggestion, a statement that it will no longer consider race and gender to boost diversities in supplier contracts. Now, that seems to me a very separate issue from unlearning racism and so forth, because, you know, without relitigating the entire history of this country, there has obviously been gross and egregious discrimination against black people and other people of colour, and it doesn't seem unreasonable to me to suggest that there should be some effort made when apportioning supplier contracts and so forth to make a corporate effort to overcome or to the extent possible transcend that history.
So this is when you get into the weeds. You try to unpack this argument. Walmart making this effort to, eliminate their DEI program. What does that actually mean in practice? Well, we know as a matter of law that in order for companies to even get certain contracts and grants, they have to have some sort of quote unquote minority set aside. So this is something that is enshrined into law. And so in order for these things to change, and I don't know exactly what that looks like to say that you won't consider race when you're considering contracts, because again, the federal government requires you to. I mean, there's a whole agency developed to this type of thing. So I don't know what this stuff actually means in practice. We've seen in cases where, and I think that the legitimate things, like the legitimate things around the anti-racist training, I think those are legitimate things. So back in, this effort in 2021, where I think the Lockheed Martin executive had to testify before Congress, and they were mandating that their employees, it was called white males awareness training. I think that's what it was called. Those type of things I think are legitimate, but I don't know how you get around not doing or making an effort. And Republicans, conservatives need to understand, even though it wasn't under the umbrella of DEI, do you know what Justice Brett Kavanaugh did when he first got in, his first term? He had an all female clerks. He had all female clerks. Now that wasn't a DEI effort in the general sense of DEI, but that is what DEI looks like. And in the matter of the Supreme Court, why does it matter? Because we know the overwhelming majority of judicial clerkships go to men. The overwhelming majority of them go to white men. So how do you account for that? And I think that that's something that Republicans, conservatives surely need to understand. But for them, when Donald Trump said that he would specifically choose a woman, he didn't say a black woman, an Asian woman, or white woman, but when he specifically said that he would choose a woman to replace the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that's exactly what he did. Conservatives don't see that as DEI because they see Amy Coney Barrett as eminently qualified.
Well, right. I mean, I think it's most conservatives would say, regardless of their, what they actually do, conservatives would say that you should just pick the most qualified person independent of their racial or gender-based attributes. There's a couple differences here. There's a difference, between doing outreach to people who've been historically overlooked, which I think is absolutely not only fine, but good and necessary. And then there's, specifically trying to fill a quota or have a certain number of people who check off boxes, which is, I think, what conservatives tend to be particularly against. I would assume Brett Kavanaugh didn't pick all women on purpose, or maybe he picked all women because of the accusations against him, or trying to shed the idea that he has some kind of bad history of relationships with women, but ultimately that they were the most qualified. And there's even a difference between saying, I'm going to pick the most qualified person, but for instance, to be my vice president, but there are a number of qualified or equally qualified people, so it's important to me to have a woman, which is what Bernie Sanders kind of did versus what Joe Biden did, where he said, no, it's going to be a black woman regardless. We're not even, no said and done, because I really want to satisfy whoever was clamoring for it to be a particularly diverse pick.
So I think it's because we look at race and gender very differently. For me, those are parallels. Donald Trump saying that he would only only he would not he would exclude men, that he would only choose a woman to as his nominee for the Supreme Court. For me, it is the exact same thing as Joe Biden saying that he would limit his picks for vice president to a black woman. They are two different groups. Now, the thing is that women, including black women, they're lumped into the women group. That's not the other way around. I think that we look at race and gender very differently here. And so when I've even asked conservatives, I've said, okay, so when Donald Trump said that he would choose a woman, what did you, their immediate thing is, but she's qualified. Well, again, this is DEI on the conservative side. Unfortunately, in many of those that you mentioned, Robbie, who were starting pushing these efforts, it has literally become with synonymous. DEI has become synonymous with not just being black and unqualified, but it's giving black people an advantage. Because even though I didn't think that, I thought that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, I thought that she was eminently qualified to be on the Supreme Court. I understood from the conservatives' perspective, but when Joe Biden said that he would only choose a black woman, for them, then it was immediately she was unqualified, ignoring the experience that she had. Conservatives did the same thing when it came to calling Dr. Gay at Harvard, even though that she had been in a lot of administrative positions at several universities before then. It is how we view DEI, and I think that the activists on the DEI side, on the DEI side, I think that they've done a disservice to the overall movement, because now we can't even have these type of conversations. The fact that companies are saying, well, we're no longer going to entertain race when it comes to our contracts. I mean, I don't think that that is a good outcome, and it's unfortunate that we got here. But my point is that both sides have had really integral roles to play, and